I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Minekeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What is going on, everybody? Mike Kadlick here in Massachusetts. Taylor Kyle is there all the way down in Mobile, Alabama, getting ready for the 2025 Senior Bowl. He made it down there. He is alive. He is well. He is in the hotel getting geared up for a fun week in Mobile. So we're going to talk about the Senior Bowl a little bit here on this show. We'll get to some of the trenches, offensive line, defensive line preview quickly coming up. I know Taylor, you and Alex did a great full-length preview last week, but we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it at the end of this show. But first, we didn't know if we were going to do a show today. Big travel day. It's a Monday. We obviously talked last night on our post-game show, but the Patriots made a bunch of moves today that we had to get on the show and talk about. So three hires they made today officially. Doug Marrone is joining the staff. His role is still to be determined. Thomas Brown is joining the staff, tight ends coach, as well as pass game coordinator. And then Jason Houghtaling is joining the squad. Also to be determined right now, but he is a long-time offensive line coach in the NFL. Let's get to all three of them. And I think we should start with Doug Marone. A, because it was the first one announced today, but B, he has a ton of experience in this league, Taylor. He's been a head coach twice with the Bills and with the Jaguars. He's coached offensive line across the board for a long time. Actually, just recently, I remembered this, or I forgot about this, and then was reminded by Mike Reese's tweet today that he was actually working with Bill O'Brien at BC this season.
I didn't even know that. Because on Wikipedia, it doesn't say that he was doing anything last year.
Right, I know. It looked like he had a gap year, and that's what I had thought too. And then Reese put out his little report tweet of it. And I think on maybe it was Games with Names or something of that nature, Bill O'Brien had mentioned that Marone is there. And I think they had worked together in the past or kind of crossed over before. But Doug Marone is here. He's going to help out on this staff. Another experienced hire for this Patriots offense. So what was your reaction to see the Marone acquisition becoming official today?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the love in the chat for the fresh cut. I really appreciate it. I don't want that to go unnoticed. You're making me feel like such a pretty boy. But I was excited initially. That was thank you, Courtney. That's our lovely top intern, Courtney Harris. Unpaid, unfortunately. We're working on it. But Doug Marone, I was excited at first because the guy played offensive line in the NFL, kind of continuing a trend of you got a staff full of guys who have been coaching experience, who have been players, and Mike Vrabel has acknowledged how his experience as a player allowed him to connect with players as a coach, and we know you want to teach and make connections, or what was the phrase that Vrabel used? Teach through connections? Something like that?
you want to make basically set a relationship and teach through that way or something along those lines. I forget the exact quote, but that was the gist of it.
Exactly. And anytime you are a former player, there is that certain level of it where you can just relate to players on a different level because you've experienced it. And again, the guy has been coaching offensive line in college and in the NFL going all the way back to the 90s. So a lot of experience. So I was excited for the hire initially because I wanted somebody experienced. Do you know the Patriots have had 6 offensive line coaches in 7 years?
It makes a lot of sense. They had a ton of continuity with Scar, but since then it's been very, very, choppy. So
yeah, because there was Scar, then it was Carmen. Oh my God, I always get them mixed up.
Popovich,
Cole Popovich, but then the COVID thing. Then it was Carmen Brasillo. Then Adrian Clem. Then we get Matt Patricia. Then Adrian Clem.
Yeah.
Then we had Scott Peters, and now another offensive line coach. So I'm just hoping for some kind of stability. But I do have to acknowledge the fact that Nate Tice, one of the people I respect the most in this business, his father coached in the NFL, really, really knowledgeable and understands how things are going, not just in our little Patriots bubble, obviously. He covers the entire league. He mentioned that he liked the Marone hire if he was helping out, but didn't love it if he was the actual offensive line coach. Where Houghtaling, I kind of wonder how that's going to work out, although you would think that Marone would be the one who actually gets the title. But when I asked Nate exactly what is it that you didn't really love about Doug Marone, he mentioned that he's kind of antiquated. Players didn't get better under him, and he never really adjusted. And then he pointed out the Alabama year as maybe the most embarrassing. It's also kind of notable that he's been either let go or not retained by the teams he's been on most recently, maybe outside of BC. I don't know exactly how that relationship ended. So this may be the hiring that I'm the most skeptical about.
Okay.
There's somewhere, at least there's continuity with Oh my gosh. Nate literally just hit me up again. It was like, yeah, I was kind of disappointed by the hire. So yeah, that's what it is. And obviously you want to hold out hope. I would love for this to go well, but at the same time, given the recent track record for Doug Marone, it's hard to get as excited as I was initially, knowing that he didn't have as much success in other places. Maybe, having Houghtaling, who did coach offensive line in Tennessee, maybe they can have some kind of melding of minds and bridge that gap a little bit. Obviously, Mike Vrabel is going to be very involved in the trenches as he was in Cleveland. I'm sure he's going to be all over, but I think the offensive line will be a focal point as well. And with guys like Layden Robinson, Cole Strange, Caden Wallace, development is huge. I would love, we've talked about this, to see the offense actually get some veteran players in that offensive line room, like a Trey Smith, like a Patrick McCarry, whatever you got to do to surround Drake May with guys who have been pass protectors and run blockers in the NFL for several seasons and aren't really projections. Like Layden Robinson finished on a relatively high note relative to where he was coming from earlier in the season. Cole Strange looked pretty good at center. Maybe he's the future, but we're still not sure yet. It wasn't a full season. Caden Wallace missed most of the year with injuries. So it's a big TBD right now. It's the first, it's the first one that I really kind of have some pause, because there isn't experience with Vrabel. There's no experience with McDaniels, and there's no experience with another coach like with a Larkin, where it's, he worked under Chip Kelly. They just won a national championship. That's kind of encouraging. So I love the experience for Doug Marone. I love the background. I love the fact that he has experience as an interim head coach, as an actual head coach for multiple seasons in college. Or actually, was he a head? No, just in the
he was a head coach at Syracuse for 2 years.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure if I was because I wasn't sure if I was mixing up him and Dino when their times were exactly. I think Dino was right after him, because that was when I got to the school. I think Dino was there my freshman year. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Unfortunately, I wanted to be psyched about this, but we're gonna have to see how this one works out.
Yeah, it's a decent point that you mentioned the lack of relationship with Vrabel or Josh McDaniels. They've never really worked together. So, on the one hand, it's good to bring in a guy with that head coaching experience, with that leadership experience, right? He's been so many places and has been, so well respected as a coach. Again, you mentioned he's been working or at least he's been working, I'm reading his page now. He's been working in the NFL since 2001, and he's been coaching in general since 1992 after his playing career. So he's weathered, he's experienced, but you mentioned kind of antiquated and isn't, hasn't turned over with the times. However, you hope that his experience last year in college, working football strategy with Bill O'Brien, kind of mix that with the very much younger generation of coaches he's going to be working with on this Patriots staff, which we're going to get to right now, can hopefully kind of turn things over in a positive light. But I like the thought of Jason Houghtaling, who we'll talk about, being, maybe the primary offensive line coach, with Doug Marone as that senior advisor type coach, like the Ben McAdoo they had last year. I could see him kind of sitting in that role, because he's been an OC in the league as well. He's been an OC. Has he been an OC? Yeah, he was an OC with the Saints at one point. And again, he's been a head coach and an offensive guy. So he has that sort of overarching experience. You give him a senior analyst title like he was at BC. And I think that can help a lot, just as his experience grows. All right, this is probably
wrap Houghtaling into this, just because it's just kind of a natural transition.
Yeah, let's do Houghtaling now, and then we'll talk about who I think is probably our favorite hire in this, in Thomas Brown, in a second. But let's do Houghtaling, because he worked in Tennessee under Vrabel, and it looks like he's going to work closely with Doug Marone, both being the offensive line adjacent coaches that are coming in. What do you make of this hire? Do you think this is? Do you like this one better than you like Doug Marone?
This is another one where it's TBD for me, because he was an assistant offensive line coach with the Titans for a couple years, and he was their offensive line coach in 2023. Then he was no longer on the team in 2024 when there was that Mags exodus when Mike Vrabel was fired, and then he became the assistant offensive line coach for the Bears. So considering he's been the O-line coach under Vrabel before, it would make sense for this to be maybe like a Jeremy Springer, Tom Quinn situation. Sure. Where you give the younger guy, Jeremy Springer had never been a coordinator before, so it's not apples to apples. Also, Houghtaling was actually a head coach in college. He was the head coach at Wagner. Yeah, from 2015 to 2019, which is pretty cool. Also at Troy, this is a guy with a pretty interesting background, but we'll have to see exactly how this one works out. But I feel that with Marone's recent track record, it makes way more sense for it to be Houghtaling, who is the main offensive line coach, with, again, Doug Marone being an advisor in terms of scouting, like Ozzie Trapillo, BC. He's been working with Doug Marone specifically to get ready for the offseason and get ready for the pre-draft process. So That's something you kind of like, where Scar was that guy who had a certain eye for talent and was able to pick out the guys that he wanted and preferred for the team. Even when he was in retirement, both times he was retired, he was giving the Patriots some tips and kind of serving as an advisor. So if he's an assistant who gives that just wide depth of experience, as well as someone who, as a head coach, can also bring some leadership and kind of know his role in this ecosystem, that would be great. I kind of just lumped this right back into Doug Marone, but that's really because, again, Houghtaling, they're both unknowns in this particular situation. And neither was an offensive line coach last season. Marone hasn't been one since he was with the Saints. So I wish, this is the frustrating part of the season, where I wish we had more information.
Mend their minds together. Two guys who, were kind of TBD about, they come together, they make a great offensive line coaching room together. I think that's the hope here with the Patriots.
That's why we're co-hosts. You put the bow on. You put the bow on.
I just do want to correct, now that I'm looking at it. He was the head coach at Troy High School. It wasn't the university.
Oh, so, wow. Good call.
But he was a college head coach at one point for Wagner. He was there from 2006, essentially, until I believe he was fired in 2019. But he was their offensive coordinator. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm reading this wrong, too. He's worked at Cornell. He's worked at Williams and was at Wagner a bunch as well. So the OC experience to me is key. I think I like somebody who has called an offense before and isn't just specialized to, hey, I just know what the wide, not that they only know that, but, hey, I just do wide receivers. Hey, I just do offensive line. Like, no, this is my specialty here right now. Houghtaling's being offensive line, but I've called an entire offense before, and I've coached an entire college program before. There's so many guys on this team now. Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, Houghtaling, Doug Marone have all been head coaches. And so has Thomas Brown, who we're going to get to, was an interim head coach this year. Like, that's something that I think shouldn't go untalked about, where there's so much leadership experience here. Now, yes, some of them weren't the best head coaches. Like, Marone went to that AFC Championship game. He wasn't a great head coach in Buffalo or in Jacksonville for the majority, but he's still done it before. He's still seen the league through that lens, which is something that the Patriots didn't have at all last year. I think the only one with head coaching experience was Ben McAdoo, and he wasn't even really, a coach. He was more in that advisory role. So, Houghtaling,
I stood up the Bills and told them that he was coming back. Remember when Doug Marone left the Bills? And there was that whole thing in the video in the locker room. And everybody was hyped that he was coming back. And then it's like, JK, I'm going to Syracuse.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So that was something. But again, a ton of head coaches on this staff, and we're going to talk about our favorite hire in just a second. But before we do talk about and dive into Thomas Brown, a quick word from our friends at Prize Picks. We'll be right back. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you have to do is pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, and the big game in the NFL is almost here, which means it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw for 1 yard to win. And if you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you will win real cash. So sign up today on the Prize Picks app. You'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So make sure you sign up today, download the app, and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And it is the best time of year to play Prize Picks right now. You get that $5 in, and you play that $50, or you get that $50 instantly, rather. And right now, the Celtics are playing tonight, a 7:30 tip against the Houston Rockets. So get in on the action right now. And also, I mentioned in that ad read that the big game will have one quarterback to have more than one passing yard, or more than a half passing yard. It is Patrick Mahomes, and it's so easy. He's obviously going to throw for one passing yard in that game next Sunday, and that can be your free play on the Prize Picks app. So again, download it, use that code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Now let's continue on with the Patriots coaching staff hires, with, I think, the biggest one of the day, and that is Thomas Brown coming over from the Chicago Bears. And Thomas Brown had quite the 2024 season. He was brought in after his staff was fired in Carolina last year, and ends up becoming the passing game coordinator for the Chicago Bears. They then fire their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, so he becomes the interim offensive coordinator for Chicago, begins to call plays for Caleb Williams, and then just a few weeks later, Matt Eberflus gets canned as well. So in a matter of I want to say it was 17 days, he became passing game coordinator to OC, all the way up to interim head coach. And I wrote a funny story about this for SI.com a couple months ago when he kind of did his introductory interim press conference. And he mentioned he had lost 25 pounds over that span because all he was doing was working. He was like, I was working so much. I had to take in so much information. I didn't even, and he was like, I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't hungry because I had so much shit to do. So he's a hard worker, that's for sure. But hopefully he can get some meat on his bones now that he has a true job here again. But he was hired as the tight ends coach as well as the pass game coordinator for the Patriots. Something to kind of throw in here is the Tony Dews hire that was already been made, which was also TBD. Feels like he's going to be running backs coach. Thomas Brown will be the tight ends coach. So your thoughts on the Thomas Brown hire? Another one I think we both agree that this is probably the best one that they've made, at least today.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that Thomas Brown was the tight ends coach, a little bit, because Tony Dews was the running back coach in Tennessee. So it did make sense, but he also had more experience, I believe, coaching tight ends. Thomas Brown only had the one season, and that was really as a challenge for Sean McVay to allow him to learn the entire offense and go beyond just the run game, but also learn about the pass game and how things kind of connect together. And that's what makes it so exciting, is that Rams system also had Patriots influences from Nick Caley. A lot of the Aaron Hart-Perkins kind of terminology, where instead of having these long names for things, you kind of shorten it down to just 2 words that tell you what the entire concept is and allow guys to move around in certain places. I haven't studied the Rams super close, so I don't know how deep in the weeds it got, but that was what I was, that's what I read when I was kind of looking more into him, is that, or Nick Caley at least, was that he integrated a lot of things he learned in New England and then adapted those for Los Angeles. So that kind of gives Thomas Brown a very unique perspective, where he does understand some of the Josh McDaniels stuff already, but he can also bring his own influences from that Rams offense, which we know the Patriots have been kind of knocking on that Rams door for quite some time now. They've clearly been, going back to Matt Patricia, it wasn't specifically Sean McVay. Right. He wanted that Shanahanian type of scheme. And then with Gerard Mayo and all these other hires, they've kind of been trying to get into that same West Coast kind of well from that tight pants circle. So with Thomas Brown being able to bring that, and also it's really unfortunate that he's just had some rotten luck with the stops that he went to after Los Angeles. You go to be the offensive coordinator for the Panthers, does not go well because they're run poorly from the top down, as we know. And also Bryce Young struggles as a rookie. It just was not a very talented team either.
Well, the owner was a mess. The quarterback stunk in his first year, and Frank Reich was only given 11 games to try and succeed. And, I'm not sitting here standing up for Reich necessarily. Something was clearly wrong, but all of that right, exactly. That all has an effect on Thomas Brown and kind of where his career arc starts to go.
Exactly. So it's a bad situation there. Then obviously in Chicago, that offense is a complete disaster. Coordinator gets fired. Then he has to take over because their leadership is pretty much gone. And there wasn't a lot of success, but I don't really think you can tie that to him necessarily. So that's why it is so exciting. He's got a little bit of the old. He can also maybe integrate a little bit of the new. He's got experience in these leadership roles because he was the assistant head coach, because he was the interim. Now, I don't know how much. I'm sure he learned a lot, but I'm not sure how valuable long-term that experience was, just because he was drinking through a fire hose. Dude, if I'm watching film for too long, I'm like, oh man, damn, is it been 4 hours? I totally forgot to eat lunch. I cannot imagine if I was learning on the fly how to be a head coach, how to run the offense. That's entirely too much responsibility for one man to handle, but he does have he's very well respected in league circles, especially the ascent he made to get the titles he got when he left Los Angeles were clearly indicative of that. And the Patriots have also shown that they have some respect for what he could offer as well. Probably won't be around for too long, because if the Patriots have success, he probably leaves and becomes an offensive coordinator. But even still, being able to teach Josh McDaniels some of what Sean McVay does with his system. And then again, Riley Larkin, some of the Ohio State stuff, which is just really, it's going to be an interesting melting pot. And I think Josh McDaniels is the coordinator that you want to be able to handle all those different things, because he's been so adaptable, because that's what the system is. It's just kind of how to consistently grow and evolve. So that's why it is so exciting. And then the quarterback coach, Ashton Grant, is someone we just don't really know a ton about, but at least Thomas Brown has the kind of resume that you look at and say, okay, this is clearly a positive hire on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. It's I like the melting pot idea too, where you kind of bring in all of these ideas together, and then Josh McDaniels makes his offensive gumbo out of all these things and just kind of throws that on Drake May. But and
that's
even
what we
with
talked about. Like with the Josh McDaniels hiring, we were like, all right, if you're gonna hire Josh, you want to see that he's evolved. And obviously he did that on his own, but it's like, okay, maybe he gets literally we said, maybe it's a passing game coordinator, a quarterback's coach, like people from other systems that can bring in their influence and then teach him these things so he can kind of get up to speed. So the plan is working so far in terms of just them getting the pieces, but now we have to see if this gumbo tastes any good.
And it feels, And I mean, that's where it's all going to come down to the players they bring in, right? Where, the coaching staff is in place and it's all great, but I was joking around earlier saying like, okay, Doug Marone doesn't all of a sudden make Vidarian Lowe a Pro Bowl starting caliber left tackle, right? Like you still need players to be able to mend and mold that way. But again, a good hire here with Thomas Brown. I think it's the first time they've ever actually had a passing game coordinator in Foxborough. Obviously, Bill was never really too big on titles, and then they haven't done it since he left. Obviously, just the 1 year with Gerard Mayo. Again, I think a good hire. And then as far as the hierarchy, where Brown might not be here very long, especially because he can't really go much higher than where he is. Position coach to OC is the next step, and Josh is, the thought is he's going to be here. But you mentioned Ashton Grant, you mentioned Riley Larkin. Those guys, then they grab the pass game coordinator title, and those guys start to learn a little bit more, and then they develop within, and then that's kind of how the pipeline goes. So it's exciting stuff on the offensive side of the football for sure. However, as the defense starts to take place, we do have two guys unfortunately not returning. That is Dante Hightower, inside linebackers coach, as well as outside linebackers coach Drew Wilkins will not be back either. So I want to get your thoughts on those guys. But again, before we do, a quick word from another sponsor, our friends over at Game Time. We'll be back in a few seconds to round out the coaching staff and also talk about the Senior Bowl coming up. This episode is also powered by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to anything, concerts, games, and more. They have the Game Time Picks feature that makes getting tickets even easier. It filters out the fluff and only shows you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. They also have the lowest price guarantee, and they have seat views to check out exactly what it's going to look like from your seat. So make sure you download the Game Time app today to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That is Game Time. Head over there. Don't check their Super Bowl prices. They're way too expensive, even on the Game Time app, but it is still the lowest price guaranteed on the Game Time app. So if you are willing and able to go to Super Bowl, the Super Bowl 59, is it 59? Yeah, 59.
It's
59.
The abbreviation is something funny.
It's Licks. It's LIX.
Yeah, Super Bowl Licks.
Super Bowl
one,
Licks.
I think the one with the Giants with Super Bowl's Licks. That's how I always remember it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, but if you can go, if you're up for it, and you can get $20 off your first purchase with the Game Time app, use that code CLNS. All right, let's round out the coaching staff for the Patriots here before we get into some quick Senior Bowl talk at the end of this thing. The Patriots, like I said, moving on from Dante Hightower. Another Super Bowl legend around here is unfortunately gone in Dante Hightower. And then Drew Wilkins, who is considered to be one of, the more up and coming outside linebackers coaches, and also overlapped with Ryan Cowden in New York. So this one kind of surprised me a little bit, but they also brought in, I believe his name is Milton Patterson from Florida A&M. Shout out Joseph Pastoris, by the way. He's been on top of everything.
Killing it.
He's been killing it. He's growing his following a lot there over on his social. So if you haven't, check it out. But he's been on top of all the hires, and Milton Patterson is joining the staff. So it sounds like he has worked. He was a DC at Florida A&M and also the linebackers coach, so he could be involved in that room. But thoughts on Hightower and Wilkins leaving? I think two guys who, Hightower not really given the best chance, but also was his first year as a coach at any level. And then Drew Wilkins, who looked to be pretty promising.
Yeah, well, this was kind of written on the wall because you had like Clinton McMillan was hired. He was the defense. He's been a defensive or assistant defensive line coach for the Titans. Also the pass rush specialist. It was like, yeah, that's Joe Kim's area, but also kind of seems like it might be stepping on Drew Wilkins' territory a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That was Jerry Montgomery's job, and obviously he left for the Bengals. But then Drew Wilkins started to seem like he might be the odd man out. And I know he did work with Cowden, of course, but I don't know. It just he felt like an odd fit. Like he wasn't a guy that had a ton of success in his first season. So even though he is an up and comer, it's like, you'd understand if Vrabel wants to bring in his guys, which you've kind of seen more on the defensive side of the ball. So that was the first one. And then obviously with the hiring of Milton Patterson as linebackers, sorry, not enough room. Wilkins, anytime we talked to him, he was really, really helpful. He was able to give us some pretty great insights, especially into Keon White early on. Kind of when he dovetailed a little bit, I didn't get to get in the room with him as much, but he was pretty insightful and is respected around league. So hopefully he lands on his feet. And Donta Hightower, so I know he brought like energy to the practices, and it's Hightower. Like he comes with a certain level of respect immediately, but he also acknowledged that he felt that he wasn't necessarily putting players in the best position because he was struggling as a first-year coach. And I respected the hell out of him for admitting it. A lot of the times you wouldn't hear that at all, and maybe he shouldn't have said it. I don't know. But it was at least nice because it explained a little bit why the linebacker room looked so bad. Obviously, he didn't have Bentley, and a lot of guys were forced to step up in tough circumstances. But so often it felt like guys were standing still or running the wrong way. Very rarely did it feel like guys had a beat on what was coming, got into the hole, and immediately shut things down. And then, of course, in coverage and all those things. So it makes sense. I was hoping maybe Hightower could stay on as some kind of defensive assistant. Kind of wild that two of the greatest linebackers in Patriots history were one and done as coaches. Kind of makes me sad a little bit. But these made a lot of sense just considering the hires that Vrabel did make. And also, again, really cool that they're going to have somebody else on the defensive staff who's got experience in more of a leadership role because, of course, Patterson was the defense coordinator at A&M. So the moves, I don't think any of us would have anticipated. I think even in our preview, Wilkins and Hightower probably in orange because we're like, like we don't know of anybody necessarily, but like, why would they stay? Doesn't make a ton of sense. So yeah, it's not necessarily surprising, but coaches that showed up, I don't want to give the spiel. I don't want to give the spiel. I don't got to do
the only coach that is
hard.
The only coach that's a holdover at this point is on special teams, right? Jeremy Springer and Tom Quinn. Everyone else is gone.
And there was some rumor that Mike Pellegrino wasn't coming back. I have not seen anything to substantiate that.
No.
I don't know where that came from, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that because if you're looking at people on the staff who should be retained, it's Jeremy Springer and Tom Quinn, but probably even higher is Mike Pellegrino and probably also Brian Belichick. You can say, all right, the veterans took a step back, but also like Kyle Duggar struggled early on, then got hurt. Jabril Peppers missed most of the season. So Del Pettis actually played pretty well. So I don't think that's a fair indication of what Steve did. But Mike Pellegrino, he knows that room so well. He has a relationship with those guys, and he has coached them very well. Corner has not been a significant weak spot for the Patriots in a very long time, and that is a lot of that has to do with Pellegrino's contributions.
100%. There was also the hire of Kevin Richardson, who I don't know if it was reported, I believe, by Mass Live Mark Daniels, who is a defensive backs coach. So we'll see where he fits in. Safeties, corners, Pellegrino, Belichick. That's sort of the TBD part, but everything else has pretty much been filled out on this Patriot staff. And so far, a lot more experience, a lot more tangible evidence of solid coaching in their pasts compared to last season. So we'll be on top of that as things continue. But before we get out of here, we quickly have to touch on the Senior Bowl because, again, Taylor is not in his normal Funko Pop-ridden studio at home. He is instead in a hotel room in Mobile, Alabama, because the Senior Bowl is this week, and Taylor is headed to practice tomorrow. And he's going to have his eye on many things, but one of the things specifically is those trenches, offensive line, defensive line, two of the biggest needs for the Patriots heading into 2025. So, Taylor, before we get out of here, the floor is yours. What are you looking for? Offensive line, defensive line in Mobile. What are you watching tomorrow?
Yeah, so I'm not going to get too in-depth here because if you want to know what I think about the defensive lineman, the offensive lineman, check out the video that I did with Alex Barth. We've also been putting those into smaller videos if you kind of want to see them specifically. But looking at the national team and American team, we have the rosters. I literally have it right in front of me, so I know who's playing who. And now I kind of have my eyes on, all right, who are some matchups that I really want to see for each team? Now, with the national team, I'm going with Josh Connerly Jr. versus Mike Green. I think Josh Connerly is probably the best pure tackle in this draft. I know Brandon Thorne's been high on him for a while. That's what kind of piqued my interest. I think that Donovan Smith might end up making it close. Who knows? I think the combine is going to have a big role in that. But Connerly looks like a tackle. He's got the arm length. He's got the athleticism. He's got the foot speed. So I think he's going to end up doing really well. I want to see him versus Mike Green, a guy who weighed in at 250. We weren't sure how he was going to weigh in. That was going to be a big part in his evaluation. But guy is out of Marshall, but he does not play like he's a guy out of Marshall. He is a very talented player. Could end up being a first-round pick. We'll see what exactly happens, but I'm really interested to see that matchup because Mike Green could end up being one of the best pass rushers to come out of this draft. Then Anthony Belton. I'm sorry, on Pat's beat, I called him Benton. I don't know. I've not heard Belton as a last name a lot. I've heard Benton, though. I will correct myself. I am so sorry, Anthony. But Anthony Belton, absolute freaking mountain of a man. Really fun to watch. Reminds me of Trent Brown. He doesn't have the foot quickness because Trent Brown, for whatever.
Don't say that too loud for Patriots fans.
I'm sorry. Trigger warning. But Trent Brown, the dude played like a basketball player at 370 pounds. He had a very rare footwork. But in the way that Belton kind of plays in a way where he's just waiting for you to make the move, because he knows there's only a certain number of things you can do. You're not going through them. It's really tough to get around him. The best way to beat him is inside, and that's what we saw a lot of the time with Trent Brown. Now, the downside is the consistency, the footwork, a lot of the technique stuff is very raw for him. But I do like his fit as a potential right tackle for the Patriots, maybe even left, who knows what they want to go with. But because Belton is such a mountain of a man, I want to see him go against Landon Jackson from Arkansas, another man who absolutely wants the GD smoke. This dude is a menace. He's violent. He's physical. He's probably more in a Dietrich Wise kind of mold, but I think he's a slightly better athlete. He's not quite as slow, but he's not super explosive either. But in that Titans defense, you had guys like Danico Autry, who not the most athletic guy, but he's a bad mother effer, and he is playing with his hair on fire consistently, a very strong physical guy. I see that in Landon Jackson. Curious where he's going to go, but I feel like that's going to be a clash of the Titans between those two guys on the national team. Moving over to the American team, I'm going to be looking at Armand Membo versus Kyle Kennard. Now, Membo is somebody who I know some people think he can play tackle, he can play guard. Kyle Kennard is someone who I actually watched go up against Will Campbell, another guy who is he a tackle? Is he a guard? What is he? It was a pretty good back and forth battle, but Kyle Kennard beat Will Campbell clean on a few reps. Mostly, I think it was on counters to the inside. So I want to see how Membo can really deal with that and whether or not he can show, hey, I can be a tackle in the NFL. Finally, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, Jonah Savine. Oh my gosh, I looked it up before the show too. I'm so sorry.
You listened to it, didn't you?
Savinaea, Jonah Savai. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to butcher it again.
We'll take it.
But yes, he actually weighed in, I believe his arm length was 33 and a half or something like that. And he was another prospect who people thought, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? Another guy who showed that he could probably play both, especially when he has that arm length. I want to see him against Princely. Oh my, I picked the hardest names. Why did I do that to myself? Princely Umanmielen. I think I did much better with that one. I actually got to watch Princely on the flight over here. At first, I wasn't super impressed, right? Because he doesn't have his hands aren't great. Sometimes he was just running up field. He's competitive. He reminds me a little bit of Josh Uche, but he handles contact better. But when I say Uche, I mean because of the speed and the explosiveness. This dude was sawing quarterbacks in half against Georgia. He was beating them with speed around the corner. He was beating them with spin moves and just sawing guys in half, beating both of Georgia's offensive tackles. At one point, I think the right guard actually flipped over to left guard for a while, or vice versa. But he was really impressive. So with his arm length, with his explosiveness, I'd like to see what he can do in a matchup against, again, somebody who some people aren't sure whether or not he can stick a tackle in the NFL. So there's going to be a lot of good matchups. I wish this was more of a year where the Patriots needed corner because, I'm just like any other fan. I would love to watch wide receiver.
You want to watch the one-on-ones, yeah.
That's what I want to see. But at the same time, at the Senior Bowl, I remember last year watching on TV. I'm like, these wide receiver one-on-ones are very fun. But the trenches, man. The trenches are where it's at. So that's where I'm going to be, unless there's some crazy swing and Jaden Higgins pops off and I got to make sure I see him. But really, I'm going to be locked into the trenches for the most part. So those are the matchups that when I see them, my ears will be perked up and I will be letting you guys know what happens as a result of those.
Love it.
Jonah Sav. I should have just said that. Is that a nickname that he has? I'm going to adopt that because I feel like a jerk.
Jonah Sav measured in a tackle up play. Yeah, Jonah Sav. We'll take it. Jonah Sav. But yeah, that's how I was going to kind of end this. So I was going to end this thing off was that you are down there. You are in Mobile. You look tired. By the way, you just kind of did that whole. No, but because you.
Everybody else in the chat is so nice. You're like, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Like, shit.
Yo, yeah, everyone's like, nice spot. Taylor's down there. Great job. And I'm like, you look freaking exhausted, dude. But no, the other thing I said you look tired because you put your hand on your head like that. But Taylor's going to be down there in Mobile. He just gave us the 1s and 2s on those trenches. And like he said, he's going to give the update. Do you have a moving camera down there as well?
No, because it's in front of my feet. I'm at a desk and it's in front of me and I move a lot and I keep kicking the damn thing. Also, was there an earthquake in Boston today?
Yes, there was. I didn't feel it, but there was all up and down the sort of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire area.
Damn, we just missed it. Let's go. I know. I'm sorry, but I'm not a fan of earthquakes.
It's funny. I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody got like hurt or anything. I don't think it was very safe. It was just some quaking. And I said to Kate earlier, I was like, I kind of wish I felt it. Like everybody's talking, oh, that was crazy. And I'm like, I had no idea what was going on. So,
want to hear a crazy story?
Of course.
When I was in New York, I think I was like 12 or something like that, and I was home alone, and we had an earthquake. It never had experienced an earthquake before. I'm like, earthquakes don't happen in New York. My first thought was, is this the rapture? Am I going to hell? I'm not kidding. I wish I was, but in my head at the time, I was like, it's way more likely that I'm being dropped into the bowels of hell than it is that there was an earthquake in New York. But it was just an earthquake, and everybody survived. But I was literally, dude, I was crippled with fear, not even of the earthquake, of eternal damnation, but
I am done. Here. Yeah, this life is over. Courtney says mute Taylor after this one.
That's a good story.
It was a good story. It was a funny story. Really yeah, but at this point, I do think this has to be the end of the show for everyone tuned in. We do appreciate it. Taylor is in Mobile. I am still in Massachusetts. But whether it's me, whether it's Taylor, whether it's guests, whether it's one-on-one interviews, we're going to be jam-packed on the channel all week long with Senior Bowl content. So make sure you keep it here, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, Taylor is there. So follow him on Twitter at tkyles39. He will have all the updates from practice before, during, and after. So keep it here with the Patriots Press Pass fam and the CLNS fam. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Be careful of earthquakes. Take care of each other. And I started the outro too early. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.
Going to hell.